Unity is the first fully next generation Assassin's Creed, and this was from the very beginning. This was our goal, create the first fully next gen, the beginning of a new Assassin's Creed cycle, if you will, which meant for us going back to the roots, back to basics. We decided to go back to a densely packed European city. We decided to revamp all of our core pillars, navigation, stealth, and combat, rewrite them from the ground up, change the way you actually perform missions, how you actually interact with the game world to something that's more new gen in our mind, and to add four-player cooperative experience, seamless experience into the game. It was a big challenge. Navigation, for example, we made more fluid, more organic. It focuses on flow state. You know, it's a lot more fun to play. We also give the player more control. Not only can you parkour up by holding right trigger in A, but if you hold right trigger in B, you'll parkour down. So another axis of control for the player. In terms of stealth, we made it more, again, based more on player control. We actually have a dedicated stealth mode now, triggered by a button. We have automatic covers. We changed the way NPCs actually see you. Now you have a last known position, so it's easier to know where the enemies actually saw you last, and you can manipulate them. You can attract them somewhere, and you can sort of more easily control the flow of your mission. And then the last pillar is combat. We made it much more challenging. It's a deeper mechanic. It's more based on strategy. It's more like fencing. You need to analyze your opponent and react either by strike, dodge, parry, counter. And you can no longer do those automatic counter kills that we could do before. So it's more challenging. Well, I'll tell you exactly why that is. When you create a stealth game, the fail state of stealth is detection. The result of detection is fight. So ultimately, at any point in a mission, you can get detected. As soon as you get detected, it degenerates into fight, and then you win the mission. If fight is easy, that means it becomes the path of least resistance. And it means that all players are going to be detected, end up in fight, so all missions end in a brawl. Because we revamped stealth to give players more control, to give you the ability to use a smoke bomb and break line of sight, to reset the stealth loop, we can make combat more complicated, more difficult, because we give you the tools to regain control and to re-enter that stealth loop. So this is the innovation that we've done, is to really change the stealth loop to give you more control so that we can then make combat more challenging, so it's no longer the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is actually disappearing and becoming anonymous, and then using your brains to maybe pick them off one at a time, or if you want, completely bypass all enemies and kill your target without ever being spotted. But some players like fight, and you can still do it if you become very good at it. It's just very challenging. As soon as you start facing more than 3 enemies, you're probably going to die. You know, first of all, more than 2, the third one is just going to pick up his gun and try to shoot you. And before, they actually waited for their turn to actually attack you. So they attacked you, and then the other one attacked you. Now they're actually going to try to synchronize, and they're going to try to attack you at the same time to destabilize you. So it's much more challenging. All of the different levels of the game we really reinvented. You know, the low-level part is all of the stuff that I told you about, the controls and the combat, the stealth, navigation. The mid-level stuff is how you interact with the actual game world. So missions are part of that. We really changed the way that you play missions. Before, we had these gameplay blocks. We had, you know, a fight block, a tail, an eavesdrop, a chase, all of these things. We still have these because in themselves, these activities are cool. The problem, we believe, is when you force players down a unique single path. For example, you have the tail discard, and as soon as you get spotted, you desynchronize and you start over, and then you do the same thing. And you know that when he gets to this point, he's going to turn around and you hide. And if you replay it, it becomes more and more frustrating because you've already played it and you just want to get to the new parts. The way we fix that is that, you know, for example, if you need to tail an enemy because you need to find out where the enemy base is, all you have to do is find the enemy before he reaches the base. You can lose the enemy at any time. If you find him again before he reaches his destination, you're going to succeed your mission. Maybe if he spots you, he runs away and the tail mission becomes a chase mission. So we make them more adaptive. And then we have a different type of mission, which we call the black box mission. Black box missions are huge, open-ended missions. There are 360-degree missions where you can approach it really any way you want. You can approach it in a fight way, you can approach it stealthily, you can approach it with navigation, try to find secret entrances. And they're highly replayable because you can replay them in different ways. So again, everything is about player control. It's about players playing the game the way they want to play them. And because we now have a deep layer of customization to our main character, Arno, we can actually reinforce the way you want to play the game by getting the specific skills or gear that lets you reinforce that way you want to play the game. And then you can actually try that out in our black box missions by playing it the way you want to play it. Back almost 4 years ago when we started making the game, and we're like, okay, this is going to be the first new generation Assassin's Creed. Let's go back to a European setting, a densely packed European city. We started looking at many cities. Paris is the most visited city in the world. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And all of this detail, this architectural detail, all of these landmarks were perfect to showcase new-gen graphics. So we chose Paris for this reason. Then we started looking at different periods in Paris history. Which one should we pick? Because Paris, there's a lot of different iconic periods that we could have chosen. We looked back to Assassin's Creed 1, and when that game was released, one of the things that it introduced to the market was for the first time we had an open world game with crowds. And interactive crowds. It was actually part of our stealth pillar, right? The social stealth, hiding in a crowd. So we asked ourselves, can we revolutionize the market again? Not with 200 NPCs, but maybe 5,000? So when in the history of Paris are there crowds, but non-passive crowds? Crowds that actually do stuff, French Revolution. So 1+1, we came up with the Paris and then the French Revolution, and it's been our setting ever since. In the beginning of the game, you're actually somewhere else. Okay. You're actually in the city around Versailles. I'll give you one idea of scale. If you take all of the landmass of Black Flag, all the islands, everything, and you put them together, the surface is smaller than Paris. Okay? This is the biggest city we've ever done. It's about as big as the frontier in AC3. The entire frontier, all the wilderness, that's the surface of Paris, right? So it is not only the biggest city we've ever created, but it's also a seamless city in the sense that there's no loading when you go into buildings. We have dozens of monuments. You can go inside. One house out of every 4 houses has an interior. We have sewers, catacombs. So the level of detail, the density of content within the city is something that we've never done before. And the stuff that you do in Black Flag is a really good game because it really encourages exploration. You get all these stories, you sail your ship and you find these islands. We wanted to do that, but with the core pillars. What if you can do that with your character? And what if everything you do gives you something, not for the progression of your ship, but the progression of your character? So skill points, money, gear, weapons, everything affects your behavior, your playstyle. You know, a hood might make you blend 30% faster into a crowd, giving you an edge when it comes to stealth, right? And literally, before, in Assassin's Creed, the main story was about 90% of the game, then you had 10%, which is the side stuff. In Unity, it's more like 40% main story and 60% the side stuff. And I'm not saying that the story is smaller, I'm just saying everything else is bigger. So you still have Arno's main redemption quest, which is a single player story. Then you have literally hundreds of different missions that you can find through exploration in Paris. Murder mysteries, contracts, treasure hunts, heist missions, brotherhood missions, list goes on. And then you have certain of them are co-op, like the brotherhood missions are large scale, high production value missions that are co-op, playable from 1 to 4. Heist missions are other types of co-op missions that are more stealth-based. They're about breaking into a place undetected, getting the loot, and escaping. So it's a very dense game, and it's based on everyone's own unique path through the city, because the stories that you find, the missions that you decide to complete might not be the same ones that I do, which means that everybody will have, hopefully, their own unique story in Unity. Frankly, it hasn't been. I can very honestly say that every one of our partner studios has been nothing but a pleasure to work with. Sometimes there's the time difference, like Singapore, for example, it's 12 hours with Montreal. So that means a lot of early morning meetings or late night meetings, and we tend to switch. Sometimes we do the morning, they do evenings, and vice versa. But I mean, everybody loves the brand so much. Everybody is so proud to be working on the brand that they're really a pleasure to work with. And it's all about communication. And when you know that there is a very real potential communication issue because of distance, and everybody knows this, it's like everybody takes an extra precaution to try to prevent that. So emails, phone calls, whenever there's ambiguity, pick up the phone and call and talk to them. Then we had one dedicated associate producer whose job was to be the hub for all of the major information going in and out of Montreal and in and out of all the other studios. So that person was very important. He was like the go-to person that would, resolve the problems and make sure that everything went smoothly.
Russian railroad.
You're the second one to say that today.
Was the first one Russian?
Yeah. Well, we actually have a Russian assassin, right? Orlov, Nikolai Orlov.
Yes.
He has his own comic book series, right? So, I mean, I won't give any speculations on future Assassin's Creed because anything I say will obviously be taken,
yes.
for cash. But I mean, history is our playground, and so far we've almost always gone forward in time. We had the Crusades, the Renaissance, and then we made an exception because we have the American Revolution, and then we have the Black Flag, which takes place a little bit before, right? So that means we can go back and forth, right? It doesn't mean that just because we keep going forward that we'll always do so. So anyways, history is our playground. Anything is possible.